Good. So welcome and happy Donut Day. So we are so thrilled to be here holding this session with Kate Raworth, Janine Benyus, Alessandra Araújo, and Fernanda Heinz. And in name of the Donut Brasil, we would like to welcome you all to this panel that it's aiming to combine both of the, I would say, theories and technologies that are becoming the steward of what can be a regenerative world today, which is biomimicry and the Doughnut economic. So in order for us to start, I'd like to invite our guests to say hello. And also to let you know that our idea here today is to have like a 45-minute conversation that works pretty much like a friend circle in which we are sharing perceptions about both theories and also connecting this to the ground, what is going on along us. Should I start with you, Kate Haworth? So if you want to say hi in order for us to start.
Hi, I'm totally delighted to be here. I'm Kate Raworth, creator of the donut. Can I show you a donut very quickly? Here's the only donut that turns out to be good for us. Leave nobody in the hole, falling short on the essentials of life, but don't overshoot Earth's life-supporting systems. It's very easy. It's the beginning of 21st century economics, and deeply ecological and reciprocal. So I'm sitting in my home study in Oxford in the UK. I'm really delighted to be part of this, and I loved watching the film.
Thank you, Kate. And following this circle of check-ins, Janine Benyus, welcome to our panel.
I'm so glad to be here with my friend and colleague, Kate, and Fernanda, artist, genius, wise woman, filmmaker. It was an honor to be part of that film. And it's so good. It captured the heart of biomimicry, I think. And I'm coming to you from Western Montana, ancestral homes of the Salish and Kootenai tribes. And I am not at home, I'm at an airport, at the observatory. So I'm looking out on all these mountains. Looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Janine. And as Janine said, Fernanda, welcome. She's the director of the movie Biocentricos, and she's holding one of the voices of Brazil as well.
Hello, Janine, Kate, Carol, Alessandra, and everyone. And each one of you have a very important presence here today. I would like to deeply thank Isabella Guerra, who was the one who first dreamed of this meeting of us. Isa, thank you so much. And my beloved and inspiring friend, Janine, so happy to be here again with you. And well, I'm really delighted and thrilled to be here with you. Thank you. I'm in São Paulo. I'm in São Paulo now. It's very hot, an unusual week, very, very hot. So we are very concerned about this moment. And I think this meeting reignites our way to dream of another different, world. So this gathering is for us to dream together.
Great, Fernanda, thank you. And finally, Alessandra, she was one of the specialists, biomimicry specialists, interviewed for the Biocentricos. So very nice to have you here and have a voice from the ground as well. Welcome.
Thank you. Very happy to be here. I remember to be in the place that Kate launched the book, Donut Economy, and she was saying Donut in rosquinha. She was saying in Portuguese in a very funny and elegant way. So I was very It was very fun and a very nice speech. And so I'm very happy that, and I remember talking to her when I asked to sign my book. Oh, everything that you talk and explain, there's so much to do with life principles from biomimicry. She said, yes, Janine is my friend. So I'm very honored to be in this panel with so many talent and brave women. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Isabella, for those invitations.
Thank you, Alessandra. So we are having 2 moments. So one warm-up right now, which is to talk a little bit about the Biocentricus, which is the movie about biomimicry. And Janine and Kate, we collected about 3 or 4 questions that we consider that can give a good match between the biomimicry and the Doughnut. Then we are opening this field for you, and Fernanda will hold these questions. She will ask you the questions. Meanwhile, I'd like to ask everybody who are in this room that if you wanna shoot any questions for us along the panel, please use the chat. So you're taking a look at the chat, so please be mindful and use it if you wanna do any questions for us alongside this panel. Good. So to warming up, Fernanda, why a movie about biomimicry and why you launched the Biocentric that way?
Well, I realized a few months ago that this call and adventure for making this film I probably dreamed at my birth. As all of us, we are born with this deeply feel of being connected to this to life, to nature and to life. So I realized that I think this making this film and being here right now was something that I dreamed when I was born, really. And my work is directed towards a more creative, feminine, ancestral, collaborative, and regenerative world. So I think that when I met biomimicry and all this work of Janine, it was like a deep call for me, a feeling that I had to show the world, and especially Brazil, because of our potential here in Brazil, and due to our biodiversity, social biodiversity. And so people really need to know more that it's something that we are born with, this potential of being a biomimic, that's how the film was born.
That's amazing, Fernanda. All humans are born with this potential of being a biomimic, and some of us actually became a biomimic, right? And that's why I think you, Janine, and Kate have been like stewards for people to guide our thoughts, to guide our emotions during this moment and during those regenerative practices. Alessandra, you're also one of us, like one of those who are able to join in the biomimicry journey. And speaking from the ground, before I hand out to Fernanda so she can start the questions to Janine and Kate, how do you see biomimicry leveraging in Brazil and in the territories that you touched after the biocentrics happened and nowadays?
First, I'd like to say that biomimicry made my whole career to make sense. I'm a biologist and I had work in several fields. And biomimicry make the bridge to talk about biology, other human needs design, or human needs language, and bridge them. And I think biomimicry, there's a lot to do with language, how we translate the nature language and how we enhance our own language. I think biomimicry, it's amazing because it has on these essential elements, these components of reconnection. And when we reconnect, we are in this observation field. We are part of the contest. And when we observe, I think we enable to see our relationships. And by seeing our relationships, we get into complexity, which is the, I think, the lack of understanding of complexity falls in the problems that we are facing nowadays, climate change, problems with economy. So I think biomimicry, it's a very important discipline to enable complexity, to enable others' relationship and how we affect other relationship and how other relationships affect us in understanding all those rules and players. So when you just reconnect with nature and observe everything that's around us, we understand how life works. And by doing this, I think we are more conscious, or at least we open to have more vision of all those interdependence relationship. And I think Brazil has a huge potential to biomimicry because we are very creative people. And we have a lot of fields to understand how life is beautiful and complex. So I don't want to talk too long. That's Janine and Kate to explain a lot of beautiful things. So I hope I answered you, Carol.
You did, sweetie. Thank you so much. So in this audience, we have, I would say, about 80% of Brazilians watching it now. So that's why I think it's really good to speak from the ground and bring a little bit of context. With this, I would like to hand over to Fernanda, who have a very interesting questions to start the conversations with Kate and Janine, and also invite you all to use the chat if you want to give any questions as well.
Thank you, Carol and Ale. Well, the first question we thought of asking you is how cities and also communities can do better understand the bounty of neighboring wildlands and how to interconnect with them and bring nature more, these wildlands and nature more to the cities.
Can I jump in? Because this question is exactly why Janine and I know each other in the first place. Because when I was writing Donut Economics, she got in touch with me and said, I'm wanting to use the donut in my work on local transformation. And we made a mashup of our two ideas and came up with a framework, which we now call Donut Unrolled. So if any local place, any locality, a town or a city or a state or a neighborhood or a bioregion wants to use the donut framework, then it involves asking, how can all the people of this place thrive? And how can this place be as generous as the wildland next door? That's the heart of the biomimicry question, these local angles, but we also put it together with global questions. How can this place make sure that the way it lives respects planetary boundaries and respects the well-being of people worldwide? So we position everywhere within planetary material flows and global supply chains. So this is what connected our work in the first place. And what's been a joy for me working with around 70 cities and towns, local governments around the world is when they encounter what we call the local ecological lens. The question is, how can your town or city be as generous as the wildland next door? And we explained this comes from Janine. And if Janine were here, she'd say, take me to the wildland next door. Let's go to the woods, the forest, to the wetlands, and let's measure nature in her own terms. Let's see how much carbon she sequesters. Let's see how she cools the air from the treetops to the forest floor, how much water she stores after a storm, how much wildlife lives here. And can we take those metrics of place and then set them as the aspirational standard for our cities and our towns? How can we bring those qualities of nature into our own settlements and make ourselves literally at home here? So it's been a thrill watching people first realize this is a wonderful question. And you can imagine that you can involve school children, local community groups going literally to the wildland next door, and then reclaiming that connection and bringing the question into the city. So at this point, I want to hand over to Janine to perhaps give some examples of the kinds of adaptations and designs that the places can bring into their city or town or settlement to start mimicking and matching the generosity of the wildland next door.
I hope you have that. I hope you have that recorded. That was so good, Kate. Thank you. That's exactly what we're trying to do. And Alexandra talked about these interconnections, right? That we forget. And for me, this really is, how do we relate? What is our relationship with the wildland next door? And biomimicry says, well, the wildland next door, there's all these beautiful gifts that are coming from that wildland into the city. And we take those very much for granted. And it's time for us to return the favor, because all organisms do. All organisms have figured out how to interconnect in a way that is beneficial to both. They're called mutualisms. And we have for too long, as a little toddler species, a very young species, just been taking. And what we give back is often deleterious to the health of the wildland that surrounds us. And so what this generous design tries to do is have people understand a few things. First of all, that we are very young and that we need to go to the wildland to learn. That the proper stance at this point in Western industrial culture is what indigenous people have done for a very long time, who live in watersheds, which is pay attention and learn how these wildlands are storing water, are storing carbon, are creating wildlife habitat, are cycling nutrients, are creating cool, beautiful habitats, are purifying water. So it's not just that they're doing it. We measure them. We measure how much, the quantity, so that we can then judge whether or not, when we come back and we design into that, that we can actually say, yes, the outcome now of our design intention is actually doing that. So if we want to store water, we're not putting down asphalt that's having water run off. Instead, every single surface is permeable because we're storing water. And on our rooftops, it's not just a white gravelly thing with some air conditioners on top of it. We're creating green roofs that bring in birds, that bring in pollinators. We're having lush landscapes up there that, by the way, people can go out and picnic if they live in that building. We're doing blue roofs, which gather water in a cistern. Because this work asks our designs to pull their ecological weight. And it's not just that we plant trees. It is going to be lush, believe me, but this future world in which we mimic the ecosystem next door, but our buildings are going to do it too. So for instance, I'll give a good, I wish I had the visual for it. There's a Coast Guard building, the headquarters in DC that we worked on in Washington, DC, just outside. It's on a slope. They were building it. They were going to put 2 towers up. And we went and said, you know, this slope, the water goes into the Potomac. And they said, what water? And there was a stream, an old stream that had been forced underground into a pipe. We said, let's daylight that stream, and then let's make the building itself clean the water, because it's coming in from the city, clean the water. And so what we did was all the roof lines, instead of being 2 towers, they became multiple roof lines. Each roof line, learning from the beaver that in a watershed has different vegetative patches as the ponds turn into marsh, and there's different vegetative passes, and it basically cleans the water going down. So we put different vegetative patches on each roof line, and then the water comes in, and the green roofs are connected, so they have waterfalls that go into the next roof and into the next roof. Everybody's got a view from their building, and then it goes into a lake where people go and they're able to play at lunchtime. And so is the local neighborhood. So this idea that we might actually it might be please in my backyard, not in my backyard. It might be PIMBY, because we've actually offered something back to the neighborhood. So the way that our work came together is I read Donut, I read this paper that you had done on the donut. And I said, this woman is thinking about these social benefits. And I know that ecological function, restoring the ecological health of a place, is going to be good for people. But let's make that design intentional. And so, for instance, one way that Kate, your work has influenced me is that now when we have these contracts, we say the people who are designing the very functional landscaping should be from the neighborhood, because we should create nurseries and plant design and horticulturalists and arborists who are of the neighborhood and who actually get not just a green job, but green wealth, because they create an enterprise. But you have to do that by design. And you have to ask your clients, put these good projects, not in the leafy zip codes that are wealthy, put them in the places where the healing is really needed, the places where there's not a tree for as long as you can walk. Let's turn that around. And that's where the social and ecological thriving meet.
Thank you. Yeah, wonderful. The other questions we thought of asking you is about the relationship and contribution of biomimicry with donut economics for business.
Well, that's a good one. So at Donut Economics Action Lab, whenever we work with cities, governments, or indeed when we work with businesses, and they say, oh, we want to be regenerative. Oh, we want to be distributive. It sounds so wonderful. We have these ambitions. We say, well, it's wonderful to hear about your regenerative and distributive ambitions, dear company. We believe what's really going to determine whether or not you can do that is the deep design of your company itself. So we don't only want to talk about the design of the landscape or the products or the services you're going to offer. What will determine whether you can really live this vision out is your own design. 5 design traits, and these come from the brilliant next business thinker, Marjorie Kelly. So here we are. And I invite everybody to think about this in relation to any business you work with or for, any organization you're part of, any government you work with, because these are very valuable for all organizational design. What is the purpose of your organization? Why does it even exist in the world? Since this film was so beautifully about generous reciprocity, where is generous reciprocity in your purpose? What are the networks of relationships you're in? So all the relationships that are held in your organization with your staff, with your suppliers, with your customers, with your industry allies, or are you still calling them all competitors? And what are you going to bring as your values and your behaviors in those relationships? This is the chance for mutualisms, for reciprocity, for recognizing that we all flourish when we flourish together. How is your company governed? You know, if we have major multinational companies that are governed on quarterly reports, and you talk to the chief financial officer, they say, oh, we really want to become regenerative, but every 3 months we have to prove to our shareholders we have growing profits, growing market share, and growing sales. There is very, very little room in that tight financial demand to become regenerative by design. So you need to be governed in a way that actually gives you the space to make the transformation that the 21st century calls for. How is this company owned? Is it owned by a family for 300 years? Is it owned by 2 billionaire entrepreneurs who founded it 5 years ago? Is it owned by the state, by its employees, by venture capital, by shareholders? Because all of these different designs of business will deeply influence what lies at the bottom. And as we all know, what lies deepest is often most powerful. Finance. Where is the money that finances this company coming from? Is it coming from venture capital that's been invested? Is it coming from sales? Is it coming from subsidies? Because wherever this money is coming from is going to deeply shape what that money expects, what it wants to extract, or what it wants to reinvest in purpose. So every enterprise needs to align these deep design traits. And this comes to another strong crossover that we're working Donut Economics Action Lab together with Janine's organization, Biomimicry 3.8, because they have major companies wanting to do incredibly ambitious things to transform their services, their buildings, their products. And we say, well, if you're really going to make that transformation, you also need to look within and transform your own deep design if it's going to be possible beyond one landmark project, if it's going to be beyond...
Daquele projeto que vai ser incrível. Vai ser vai fazer uma nova realidade, uma nova maneira de ser, e vai ser desenho muito mais...
I should have taken a picture of it because I'm gonna go through each of those because you're absolutely right. This living world, Gaia, us, every complex adaptive system on this planet, living system on this planet, has some deep core universals. 99% of all species that have been on this earth are now extinct. What we are left with are the 1% that are left. The good 1%, I think of it as. What can they tell us? No, keep holding it up if you can, because I'm going to go through each one. Purpose. Life creates conditions conducive to life. The purpose is the continuity of life. Full stop. Full stop. The continuity of life. Life is at the center, not the life of you necessarily, or your offspring. Of course it is, but it's life going forward forever is the system that has been created, believe it or not. And so therefore you can't take care of your offspring 10,000 generations from now. You have to take care of the place that's going to take care of your offspring. And that place, that offspring 10,000 years from now, and that place includes the community of organisms. So it's how they govern, how they interact with each other. And they do that through networks. The way they network with each other, we mistakenly spent decades, I would say wasted decades, and you learned about it in the film, concentrating on the negative interactions, which are totally a reflection of just ourselves and our economic wishes at that moment. Actually, positive interactions in the natural world, these mutualisms, are what keep networks humming. Competition happens a few times when organisms are fighting over mates. They're actually showing off for their females, actually. It is a network that holds this world together in the natural world. It is a network. And the way those networks are formed, the way the topography, the topologies that they take, their architectures are all now becoming understood. And there's a huge commonality. I'll be talking about in one of my chapters in my new book. How does life shape community? It is through networks. So weave your networks well. Governance. There is a self-governance. Life taps the power of limits, and life also curbs excesses from within. There is a self-governance. Individuals who also know that they are part of a whole body. So each cell in your body is a living organism that if you took it from your body and put it on a petri dish and put food there, your skin cell would just swim over there. Think of that. And yet they are collaborating along with, millions of microbes that are not of your DNA. They have formed a multicellular group. What is the governance for a multicellular group? It is individual doing self-governing and understanding it's part of a whole body, contributing to that whole body's survival and continuation over the long haul. Full stop. Ownership. Again, mimics ditto on governance. There is no ownership. There is a self-governance. You own your own agency, but you always are part of a larger whole on. If you're a cell, you're part of a tissue. If you're a tissue, you're part of an organ system. If you're an organ system, you're part of an organism. If you're an organism, you're part of a population. If you're a population, you're part of a biome, right? There is, and then all the way down in both directions. Where's the ownership? You own your own. You own what you do while on this planet. That's what you own. You own what you do on this planet. It's your agency. But it's not ownership over. Finance, nutrition, nutrients, distribution of what is necessary. How does that happen in the natural world? It is the definition of regeneration in a living system. One of the major parts of that is that a living system, like an ecosystem, reinvests in itself. Reinvests in itself. In a social sense, that would be reinvesting in education, in healthcare, in psychological safety. Reinvesting, there are literally, imagine an ecosystem full of little loops, tiny loops, reinvesting nutrients. A log falls, those nutrients go into a fungus. The fungus is nibbled by a mouse, those nutrients circle into the mouse. A hawk comes down, those nutrients go into the hawk. Whether it's at the very top of the food chain or the very smallest decomposers down in the soil, all of those loops are networked. They are not linear. They are cycles within cycles. They're connected to each other. And it's the way that the sun's energy comes down into an ecosystem, and those organisms turn that energy into life. And the nutrients, starting with the plants, sugars and the starches, those nutrients then begin to flow through all of these small loops, all the way to the very smallest organism and the very largest organism. The tips of the leaves down to the tips of the roots. Finance is sick when all of the nutrients are held at one level, the high level, and there's not enough networked loops to bring it to every corner of that ecosystem. If you don't have nutrients, and I mean like blood flow, oxygen, if you don't have that going to, say, your toe, your toe will have necrosis. even going to the littlest cells in your toe, it will have necrosis, meaning it'll die. So life is all about making distribution networks, which are back to networks, but finance is a distribution network. Is it fully reaching the very top of the hierarchy and the very smallest part of the hierarchy? Life really, that's growth. Life grows until it cannot, a tree grows until it can no longer reach its outer limits with nutrients. And it's also bringing nutrients back, right, from the leaves. And then it stops. There you go. That we have to do another citrus kind of mashup of life's principles and that list, Kate.
Janine, I was wondering if you could share with Kate and all of us about your last visit to Brazil, where we had the opportunity to visit 3 areas under regeneration process, and how you felt about your visit and being in contact with that, and what do you think people should know about that, and especially Kate and our future.
Well, thank you, Fernanda, for leading me. Whenever Fernanda says, let's go on an adventure, you must go. Because she will. I was there, I gave a talk, and then I wanted to interview Pedro Biomimicry, who is, am I saying that right, Fernanda?
Brancaleon, Pedro Brancaleon.
Pedro Brancaleon. And I was visiting him for my book and for the chapter on regeneration. And I'm trying to find the people in the world who are using the biomimetic lens to figure out how to regenerate the broken and frayed parts of our planet, including ourselves. How does life heal from trauma? He is a forest restoration specialist, a forest regeneration specialist. So he's trying to restore forests in the Atlantic rainforest, which is a very endangered place in Brazil, on the coast of Brazil, the Atlantic rainforest. And he's learning how to do that by studying natural systems and how they regenerate. That seems like a no-brainer, doesn't it? But a lot of people don't have that approach to the innovation. They don't go to see regenerating forests and watch them. But when he did, and when his predecessors did, it's now 3 generations of people doing this work, they realized that a regenerating forest does not look like a cornfield. We tend to go in and just literally plant individual trees. And then we say, let's get everything away from them, right? Let's herbicide everything around them to give them every advantage. And so they put them as individuals. That's how most forest regeneration is done. What's really important about this is to understand that the carbon credits, that incredible outflow of trillions of dollars that are going to be heading to, I'm an ex-Catholic, so I think about it as indulgences when you used to pay for your sins. So they're going to pay for these carbon credits, and they're going to pay, and those are going to be translated into projects on the ground. And those projects on the ground are going to have a certain amount of carbon sequestration. You can do that kind of cornfield carbon sequestration, or you can do this very dense, very biomimetic forest regeneration. And that means that you are not planting individual trees, and you are planting trees together, and you are planting them with lots of other organisms, and you are using soils that are rich. You are creating mycorrhizal rich soils, especially in the places that we have decimated. And what's really interesting is that it turns out they've done this work on nucleated forestry. And what that is they said, the way it really, like if there's an open field in the natural world, like from a clear cut, how does it regenerate if there's enough natural regeneration around, which is always the best way to do it. Just do it naturally. Sometimes we can't because we have these large clear cuts, right? But what happens is that it begins as an individual grouping of species. Okay, a species, a seed falls, it starts to grow. Guess what comes? Birds land on that and poop out other seeds. So there are these regenerators that will come if you plant something to bring them in. And that what you really can do is plant, and this is going to help in a lot of places that need healing. You don't have to plant the entire thing. You have to plant these attractors, which will create islands of fertility, because there'll be many, many species then that will grow up in the shade of the other and in the wind, the lee and the lee of the if it's a windy place. And suddenly they'll create a little island. And those will grow and congeal with the other islands. And finally, over several years, they'll cohere into a very much more natural, functional living system. You can do that with like 16% of the area, meaning it's less expensive. And you don't have to go and constantly tend it, because it's helping to tend itself. Basically, you create communities, you create little neighborhoods. I mean, I know it sounds like you must be saying, well, isn't that how it's done? Isn't that? And it's not. So he's calling it premium carbon because it has all these other ecosystem functions, ecological gifts, right? So it's also it's a generous way to recreate a forest. That's something we have to really put into people's minds, Kate, about this carbon offset. Those projects, how those projects are implemented on the ground needs to be biomimetic. And the outcome is not just carbon. Are there places for butterflies to hatch? It's a butterfly. It's the butterfly metric. What are the metrics? What are we going to say? And that's why, again, when you go into a healthy forest and you look at all these ecological gifts that we measure, it's also a measure of that health. So I think that can also come in as you measure a wildland that you've regenerated. Does it have that full suite of ecological gifts? That's another way to know. It's nature as measure. How do we judge the rightness of our innovations? Leopold said, when it tends towards the goodness to the biota, right? That's how we judge it. And if it tends otherwise, then it isn't good, right? So what does that mean, the whole biota? And how do we measure that? And who are the people who are going to be living in and amongst those regenerating places? And I believe that the people should be tending the wild, because that's the way it used to be. We forced them out. And I'd say that the wildland misses us.
Beautiful. And if I can just jump in there and say, it's such a beautiful image you've just painted. And I hope it is not long until we get to the point that this is done because it must be done, not because some company somewhere else on the other side of the world is looking for a carbon offset, right? So this just should be done. And we need to stop the continuation of excessive fossil fuel emissions, justified, as you said, as an indulgence by restoring something. The earth deserves and needs and calls for restoration without the continuation of those credits. So I can't wait till what you're describing is justified in its own terms, and that comes back, of course, to finance and apparent ownership. So we need an economic revolution. We
totally do. You're the one to lead that. You are in your amazing Pied Pipery way, with joy. Who wouldn't want to do it?
Well, we do offer donuts, and we make it fun and playful, and that tells everybody that this is economics for everybody, right? Because economics has a real danger of being intimidating and exclusive. And I often say, it doesn't start with this. This is not how we begin. We do not start with calculators and equations. We start with image, play. Actually, we start with the notion of balance, which has lain at the heart of indigenous cultures for millennia. And I think of myself very much raised in a Western industrial mindset, along with millions of us who've been trained in Western economics, in particularly neoliberal economic thinking since the 1940s. Competition placed at the heart of ecology, competition placed at the heart of economics. This is a renaissance and a return of, as you're saying, mutualisms, of reciprocity, of recognition of the network. And we need an economics of the 21st century that puts that back at its heart too, which is a very exciting prospect.
Kate, I miss you.
Wow.
I miss you. Kate's not traveling. Kate's not doing carbon, so she can't come to the United States. And I respect that, but I do miss you.
But we all
And
connect like this.
I am unfortunately needing to go. I am at this airport, and just imagine that this entire map will be just lush, livable. Every place that we inhabit, we won't like lead with, these are our roads. We'll lead with, this is where the hawks live, right? This is where the salamanders breed in spring. The maps will be different because our hearts will be different. What we value will be different. And that's what economics should start with, right? That's what you taught me.
Wow, wow, that was just amazing to see. That was, I don't know, a lecture in the heart and in the brain. So thank you all. Thank you, Fernanda, for holding the questions. And Janine, I know you need to go right now. Just wanna ask people to share their appreciation in the chat for you to give us this knowledge, you too. Also Kate, and also I think sharing from my heart now, I think maybe there should be kind of maybe a book between you two that can be named the butterfly metric, because I believe you both touched in very important topics, like how can we measure from the senses from the heart and not exactly like CO2 and all the metrics RAM that are going on today. So in order for us to finish in time, I'm afraid to say that we need to finish this panel and hopefully that we can see each other again very soon. Thank you, Kate, and thank you, Janine,
Carol,
for this.
People are asking for a photo of our
okay, that's
meeting.
very Brazilian for us. But if you, Janine and Kate, want to say like final words while I'm opening this panel so we can take a screenshot.
I will just say I love this conversation. I love the film that you made, Fernanda, and I treasure every opportunity to talk with Janine, because it's probably the one thing I regret from not flying is that I don't actually get to have these kinds of conversations. But just this interaction here, Janine's responses to this have given me months worth of musings over new economics. So thank you so much for making this happen.
Thank you for always having that framework that helps us think. These are thinking tools. They're tools. They're very important technology. Technology is tools for living. This tool, the donut, Happy Donut Day, and now the signposts, they help us keep the system in the room. It's really hard, I think, for humans it's hard for us to consider the whole, all things considered, right? It helps to have thinking tools, right? And there's a certain rigor in that, and it very much connects us to the rigor that is in every cell and every blue whale on this planet. It's the same rigor. So I agree with Kate that this is our true nature, and let's just keep looking there. And thank you, Fernanda, again, for breaking our hearts open so that we can think and talk and relate to each other and to the natural world in this new way.
Thank you, Janine.
And now I gotta go and get on this big flying. gotta go pump a lot of carbon into the air. Oh Lord, I gotta plant some more trees right at my home. All right, love you guys.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Thank you.
And
Thank
thank
you.
you
If
so
you want
much.
everyone
We
say
all-
hi for the picture. Thank you,
Hi.
Janine,
Thank you.
Kate,
Thank you very much.
Fernanda,
Thank
and
you.
Alessandra. Thank you for being here. Thank you all.
We all want to eat your apples, Janine.
Yes, we do. Thank you all. Safe
Thank you
trips.
so much. Thank you.
Obrigado. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hope